The marketplace was crowded with voices, the smell of strange food, and the sound of merchants shouting. In the middle of all this noise, a young alien girl walked with her head lowered. She had no family with her, no friends by her side. Her clothes were thin, patched from many times of repair. People whispered as she passed. Some laughed quietly, others stared with disgust. She was used to it, but every stare cut like a knife. Without warning, a loud voice rose from behind. A group of young aliens stepped forward carrying baskets of garbage. Before she could move away, they tipped the baskets over her. Rotten food, dirt, and broken scraps poured down on her head and shoulders. The crowd laughed loudly. Some clapped their hands. The girl froze, the weight of humiliation pressing her chest. She tried to brush the filth off, but her thin clothes tore under the slime in sharp pieces. Her skin was suddenly exposed, and the laughter grew louder. She wanted to scream, but her voice would not come. She wanted to run, but her legs shook too much. Shame burned through her, stronger than hunger, stronger than cold. People pointed. Children giggled. Old women spat on the ground near her feet. No one came forward to help her. In this colony, she was not considered worth saving. She was from a caste that everyone despised, a shadow among her own kind. The girl wrapped her arms around herself, trying to cover her body, but the filth kept sliding down her skin. The group that dumped garbage on her shouted insults, calling her unclean, a waste, and a curse. Every word struck deeper than the rotten scraps on her body. She stumbled backward, looking for a corner to hide in, but the circle of laughing faces followed her movement. Her eyes filled with tears, but she forced them back. If she cried, the laughter would only grow stronger. Then the crowd fell silent for a moment. A tall figure stepped forward from the edge of the market. It was a human man. His clothes were simple, worn by hard work, and his eyes were steady as they looked at her. The aliens turned their attention toward him, whispering in surprise. Humans were rare here, and most locals disliked them. The man did not shout or make a scene. He simply walked through the mocking circle until he stood in front of her. The girl could not believe it. She expected him to mock her as well, or turn away. Instead, he removed his coat and placed it gently over her shoulders. The heavy cloth covered her torn clothes and the dirt on her body. Warmth spread across her skin, not only from the coat, but from the strange kindness that no one had ever shown her. The crowd erupted in noise again. Angry voices shouted at the human. Some called him a fool. Others warned him not to touch her, saying she was cursed. One man hissed that he would be punished for protecting her. The human ignored them all. He held the coat tighter around her, then reached out his hand. His palm was strong, steady, waiting for her to take it. She hesitated. Her people had always taught her that no one would ever help her. Kindness did not exist for someone like her. If anyone gave her food, it was only to laugh as she ate it. If anyone spoke kindly, it was only before they betrayed her. But this man's eyes held no mockery, no disgust. He only waited. Slowly, she placed her trembling hand in his. His grip closed gently but firmly, pulling her to her feet. For the first time in her life, she felt protected. The human turned to lead her away, but the crowd was not finished. A voice shouted that the guards would come. Another threw a stone at his back. The human did not flinch. He guided her step by step through the angry circle, shielding her with his own body. As they walked, whispers turned to threats. Some aliens muttered that the human would be arrested. Others said the girl should be dragged back and punished harder. Soldiers patrolling nearby stopped to watch. The human raised his head, staring directly at them. His eyes were calm, but there was a fire behind them, warning anyone who dared to step closer. The soldiers hesitated, surprised by his defiance. The girl felt her heart race. Fear pressed down on her chest. She wanted to tell him to leave her, to save himself. But the words stuck in her throat. Deep inside, a small voice she had never heard before whispered that maybe, just maybe, she was worth saving. That maybe not everyone saw her as garbage. The human led her down a narrow path, away from the center of the marketplace. The crowd did not follow, but their voices still echoed, mocking, warning, threatening. She clutched his coat around her body, still shivering, but now from shock rather than cold. Her tears finally fell, silent and hot against her dirty skin. She lowered her head, unable to look at him, ashamed that he had to see her like this. But he did not seem ashamed of her. He walked with steady steps, not once letting go of her hand. His silence was heavy, but not cruel. It was the silence of someone who had already decided something inside his heart. The girl, still trembling, realized she had stepped into a path from which there was no return. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen to stand beside her, and the whole colony would never forgive either of them for it. The narrow street was filled with whispers. The human and the alien girl walked quickly, but the sound of angry voices followed them. People leaned out of shop doors and windows, pointing and muttering. Some spat on the ground as they passed. Others shouted that the human had lost his mind. He kept his head high, his hand firm around hers, not once looking back. The girl clutched the coat tighter around herself. Every step felt unreal. She could still feel the cold slime of garbage clinging to her skin, but his coat shielded her. It was heavy, smelling faintly of smoke and metal, the scent of his work. Her heart raced with confusion. No one had ever stood between her and the cruelty of her people. She wanted to believe his kindness was real, but fear kept whispering that he would demand something from her later. They turned a corner and reached a small square where the noise of the market faded. The human stopped and glanced around, making sure no one followed too closely. But before he could move again, a loud voice rose behind them. "You dare cover her filth?" A tall alien stepped forward, his eyes burning with hatred. Others gathered around, blocking the path. "She is cursed. She deserves no coat, no protection. And you, human, will pay for this insult." The girl trembled, pulling on his arm, begging in a small voice for him to let her go. She whispered that if he left her, they would forgive him. But he only shook his head slowly. He removed his hand from hers for a moment, then placed it back again more firmly, as if giving her a promise. The crowd grew larger. Some carried sticks, others stones. The girl's heart sank. She knew what mobs could do. She had seen others beaten for less. But the human did not flinch. He stepped in front of her, his tall frame shielding her from their eyes. "She walks with me," he said in a steady voice. The words were simple, but they carried strength. The aliens laughed at him. One threw a piece of rotten fruit that struck his shoulder. Another shouted that the guards would drag him away in chains. Still, he did not move. The girl looked up at him, shocked. His eyes were calm, but his jaw was tight with resolve. He looked like a wall that would not fall, no matter how many hands pushed against it. A sudden metallic sound echoed through the square. Soldiers appeared, their armor gleaming under the weak sunlight. Their weapons glowed with energy, aimed directly at the human. The crowd cheered, thinking the soldiers would punish him for daring to interfere. The lead soldier stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Release her. She belongs to the court's order. You break the law by protecting her." The girl gasped and tried to pull her hand free. She whispered again that he should let her go before it was too late. She was nothing. She was not worth this. But the human squeezed her hand tighter, refusing to let go. His eyes stayed locked on the soldier. "I will not release her," he said calmly. "She is under my protection." The crowd roared in outrage. Some called him insane. Others demanded the soldiers strike him down. The alien girl's chest tightened until she could hardly breathe. She had seen executions before. She imagined his body lying in the dirt because of her. She wished she had the courage to scream at him to run, but her voice was trapped, chained by years of silence and fear. The lead soldier stepped closer, his weapon raised. "You defy the court?" The human did not answer at first. Instead, he gently pulled the coat tighter around her body, shielding her from the stares of the crowd. Then he spoke. "I defy cruelty." His voice was quiet, but firm enough to be heard by all. The words struck the girl deeper than anything else. She had never heard anyone speak like that for her. She blinked quickly, tears threatening to fall again. The crowd hissed in anger. Someone shouted that the human should be beaten and thrown into the mines. Another yelled that the girl should be dragged by her hair. The air filled with hatred, pressing down on them from every side. The soldiers hesitated. They were trained to punish, but the human's defiance unsettled them. Few had seen a human stand so firm before. The silence stretched, broken only by the murmurs of the angry crowd. Then the human moved. Slowly, carefully, he guided the girl backward, step by step, his body always between her and the soldiers. One soldier raised his weapon higher, but the human's gaze locked on him. There was no fear in his eyes, only a dangerous calm. The soldier lowered the weapon slightly, unsure. The crowd's shouts grew louder, but no one dared step forward to strike him. Something in his stance warned them. The girl stumbled, her legs weak, but he did not let her fall. He kept guiding her down another street, away from the square. The soldiers followed at a distance, but they did not fire. The crowd remained behind, their angry voices echoing, but their courage fading. When they finally reached a quieter path, the girl gasped for breath. Her heart hammered in her chest. She looked up at him, searching his face. "Why?" she whispered, the word breaking from her lips before she could stop it. "Why do you do this for me?" He looked down at her, his eyes steady. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he gave the smallest of nods, as if the answer did not need words. His hand remained around hers, strong and unyielding. The girl lowered her eyes, unable to understand, but for the first time in her life, a flicker of hope warmed her chest. Behind them, the colony still seethed with anger. Guards would not forget this. The rulers would not forgive. But in that moment, with his coat around her and his hand holding hers, the girl felt something new, something stronger than shame or fear. She felt that she was not alone anymore. The shelter stood at the edge of the colony, far from the noise of the busy streets. It looked like nothing more than an old storage building, walls cracked and roof patched with sheets of metal. To most, it was a useless ruin, forgotten long ago. But inside, it was different. The human had repaired what he could, making it into a place to live, hidden from curious eyes. He pushed the door open and guided the alien girl inside. The air smelled of dust, wood, and faint smoke from a small fire pit. There was little furniture, just a wooden table, a few boxes, and a rough bed made of blankets. But compared to the cold streets, it felt like another world. The girl stood just inside the doorway, trembling, clutching his coat tighter around herself. She did not trust this. She had been tricked before. She had been offered food in the past, only to be laughed at, beaten, or worse. Her people had taught her that kindness always came with a hidden knife. The human did not force her to move. He walked to the table, placed some tools aside, and lit a lantern. Soft, yellow light spread through the room, chasing away the shadows. He filled a small bowl with water from a container and placed it on the table. Then he looked at her and nodded toward it, silent, as if giving her the choice. Her throat tightened. She stepped forward slowly, her bare feet making no sound on the floor. She set the coat down for a moment, dipping her hands into the water. The cold liquid turned cloudy as she washed the dirt and scraps from her skin. She rubbed harder, as if trying to erase the shame from the market. Her hands shook as she touched her face, and for the first time in months, she saw her reflection in the water. Her eyes looked tired, her skin pale, her hair tangled with filth. Tears fell before she could stop them, dropping into the bowl and mixing with the dirt. She turned away quickly, ashamed to cry in front of him. She expected him to mock her, to laugh as so many had done before. But when she looked at him, he was busy fixing something near the lantern. He had given her privacy without needing to say a word. The silence was heavy, but it was a different kind of silence, one that did not hurt. He stood and placed a small plate of food on the table, bread, dried meat, and a cup of water. To him, it was simple. To her, it was a feast. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but she hesitated. She stared at the plate, then at him. Her voice was barely a whisper when she asked, "What do you want in return?" The human looked at her, confused. "Nothing," he said simply. She did not believe him. No one ever gave without wanting something back. She waited for the demand, but none came. His eyes were steady, calm, without greed. Finally, her hunger won. She sat down slowly and lifted the bread to her lips. It was dry, rough, but she ate as if it were the finest meal in the galaxy. Each bite filled her with warmth, and each sip of water eased the burning in her throat. She ate carefully, too ashamed to devour it like the starving child she was inside. When she finished, she looked down, unable to meet his eyes. "Why?" she whispered again, her voice hoarse. "Why help me?" He did not answer right away. He returned to his work, adjusting a broken light on the wall. Sparks flickered, then the small bulb glowed weakly, brightening the room. He wiped his hands and finally looked at her. His answer was short, spoken softly. "Because no one else did." Her heart trembled at the words. Simple, yet heavy. She wanted to argue, to say she was not worth it, but the strength in his voice stopped her. She lowered her head, clutching his coat tighter around herself once more. The night deepened outside, and the colony noises grew distant. She curled up on the blankets he set out for her. The warmth of the coat and the full feeling in her stomach made her eyelids heavy. For the first time she could remember, she felt safe enough to close her eyes. But even as sleep pulled at her, fear clung to her heart. She whispered a thought she could not silence. He will betray me too. All do. The human, sitting nearby and checking his rifle, heard her broken words but said nothing. He only kept watch by the weak fire, his eyes alert. Hours passed. The girl stirred in her uneasy sleep, memories haunting her. She dreamed of stones thrown at her, of hands pushing her down, of voices screaming she was unclean. But in the middle of the dream, another image appeared, his hand covering hers, his coat wrapped around her. She woke with a start, chest heaving. The human glanced at her, calm, and then turned his eyes back to the door, guarding. She studied him quietly, the glow of the lantern casting shadows across his face. His silence was not cruel. His presence did not feel heavy. It felt like protection. Something stirred in her chest, something she had never felt before, hope. But along with it came fear. If the guards found them, he would suffer because of her. She curled back under the coat, torn between gratitude and terror. Outside, faint footsteps echoed in the night. The human heard them and placed his rifle within reach. The girl froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The sound faded, moving past the shelter. Only then did she allow herself to breathe again. The human's calm never wavered, but she knew danger was closer than ever. Even in this quiet place, shadows of the colony reached for her. Still, as she lay in the safety of his shelter, wrapped in the warmth he had given her, she felt a small piece of her shattered spirit beginning to mend. For the first time, she wanted to believe she was not meant to live and die in shame. She wanted to believe she could belong somewhere, maybe beside him. Morning light crept through the cracks in the old shelter. The alien girl woke to the sound of tools being moved. The human was already working, fixing a loose metal sheet on the wall. She sat up slowly, pulling his coat tighter around her. The safety of the night still lingered, but fear returned as soon as she remembered the voices of the crowd. They would not forget what happened. They would not forgive. Outside, the colony was alive with rumors. Word of the human's defiance spread through every street. Merchants whispered that he had challenged the soldiers. Children laughed and shouted his name with mockery. Officials, however, did not laugh. They called the girl a disgrace to her caste, a blemish that must be erased. Orders were given to find her and punish anyone who dared protect her. Guards patrolled the alleys, asking questions, warning people not to hide her. Inside the shelter, the girl watched the human quietly. She wanted to thank him, but the words felt too heavy. Instead, she whispered, "They will come. They will hurt you because of me." Her voice trembled with guilt. "You should let me go before it is too late." The human looked up from his work, his face calm. He shook his head slowly. No. His voice was steady, as if the matter was already decided. He placed the tool down and stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers, firm and unshaken. "If they want you, they will have to go through me." The words made her chest tighten. No one had ever spoken like that for her. She lowered her eyes, not knowing how to respond. Fear twisted inside her, but so did something else, something warmer, something she did not yet understand. The day passed heavily. Every sound outside made her flinch. Once, footsteps came close, and she thought the soldiers had found them. She clutched his coat tightly, ready to flee. But the steps faded, leaving only silence. The human kept calm, but his eyes remained sharp, watching the door, ready. By evening, the danger grew stronger. A man from the nearby slums, a neighbor who disliked the human, had seen them together. His greed whispered to him that he could earn a reward by betraying them. He slipped quietly into the street, telling the guards where the human was hiding the girl. The girl did not know of the betrayal, but she felt the tension in the air. She whispered again, her voice desperate this time. "They will kill you. Please, let me leave. If I go to them, they will stop hunting you." The human shook his head once more. His hand rested lightly on the old rifle by his side. "You are not theirs to take." She looked at him with wide eyes. The simplicity of his words carried a weight she had never known. All her life, she had been treated as if she belonged to anyone but herself, as if her worth was to be decided by others. But here stood a man who spoke as if she had the right to exist, to live freely. She felt tears sting her eyes, though she tried to hide them. Night fell. The lantern glowed weakly, shadows flickering across the walls. The girl tried to sleep, but unease kept her awake. Every creak of the shelter made her heart jump. She stared at the human sitting silently by the door, his rifle across his knees, his eyes never closing. He looked like a stone carved to stand against storms. Then, faint noises drifted from outside, the crunch of boots on dirt, low voices whispering. The girl sat up, her breath sharp. She knew those sounds too well. The guards had come. She reached for his arm, whispering in terror, "They are here!" The human gave a slow nod, his expression unchanged. He placed a finger on his lips, telling her to stay quiet. Then he moved to the side wall, where he had prepared a hidden passage covered by wooden planks. The girl's heart raced. She wanted to argue, to say he should save himself and leave her, but her voice would not come. She only watched as he lifted the planks, revealing a narrow tunnel leading into the darkness. He gestured for her to go first. The pounding of fists hit the front door. Voices shouted, demanding entry. The wood shuddered under the force. She froze, unable to move. Fear locked her body. The human placed a firm hand on her shoulder, his eyes steady, pushing her gently toward the tunnel. At last, her legs obeyed. She crawled inside, the cold earth pressing against her skin. He followed close behind, pulling the planks back into place. The door crashed open behind them as soldiers stormed into the shelter. Their shouts filled the air, boots stomping across the floor. But by then, the human and the girl were crawling through the darkness, the narrow tunnel leading them away. Dirt crumbled above them, the passage tight, but he pushed her forward, urging her to move faster. When they emerged into the open night, the stars spread above like cold fire. The girl gasped for air, her chest heaving. She looked at the human, his face smeared with dirt but calm as ever. He helped her to her feet, his hand never letting go of hers. Behind them, the shouts of the soldiers grew faint. They had escaped, but the truth settled heavily in her heart. The entire colony was now hunting them both. The guards would not rest until she was caught, and the human would suffer because of her. She turned to him, voice breaking. "Why? Why risk everything? You don't even know me." He looked at her with the same steady fire in his eyes. "I don't need to know you to see what is right." Her throat closed. She had no answer, only the pounding of her heart. Fear still lived in her chest, but it was no longer alone. Beside it, a fragile hope had begun to grow, born from the courage of one human who refused to let her go. The night air was heavy with tension as they moved farther from the shelter. The girl's bare feet ached from the sharp stones on the ground, but she did not complain. She knew that every sound mattered now, that every step could bring soldiers closer. The human walked ahead, his rifle slung across his shoulder, scanning the shadows. He was silent, but his silence carried strength, and it gave her courage to keep moving, even as fear twisted inside her. In the dark alleys of the colony, whispers traveled faster than footsteps. People had seen them running. Doors shut quickly when the human passed by, windows closed before the girl could even glance at them. Everyone knew what would happen if they offered shelter. Some pitied them in silence, but none dared to help. Others waited eagerly for the reward promised to anyone who betrayed their location. It did not take long for one man to act. A neighbor who despised the human slipped into the soldiers' post, telling them exactly where the pair was hiding. His words were dripping with greed. He wanted gold, he wanted favor, and he wanted to see the human suffer. The guards listened carefully, then armed themselves for the hunt. The girl and the human found a temporary place to rest in an abandoned storage yard. The human checked the ground, making sure no tracks led directly to the entrance, and motioned for her to sit. She sank against a wall, exhaustion shaking her bones. For a moment, the quiet wrapped around them like a blanket. But deep inside, she could not shake the feeling that eyes were watching from the dark. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "They will not stop. They will come tonight." The human glanced at her, his face calm, but his jaw tight. He sat beside her, loading the rifle with steady hands. "Then we will be ready," he said. Her chest tightened. She could not understand this man. Why was he so determined to protect her? Why was he willing to face death for someone he had only just met? She wanted to scream at him to leave her, to run and save himself, but the words would not leave her throat. Something stronger held her silent, fear of losing the only person who had ever stood for her. The night grew colder. The fire in her heart battled with the chill of dread. She tried to stay awake, but her body betrayed her, her eyelids heavy from exhaustion. She dozed for only a short while before she was ripped awake by the sound of boots, dozens of them, stomping against the dirt outside. The human was already on his feet, rifle in hand, eyes sharp as steel. He motioned for her to stay behind him. The girl's heart hammered in her chest as the storage yard gates crashed open. Shadows filled the entrance, guards with armor shining under the torchlight. Their leader stepped forward, shouting, "You cannot hide, human! Hand over the girl, and maybe your punishment will be lighter." The human stood tall, raising his rifle. "If you want her, you will have to take her from me." The soldiers sneered, spreading out to surround the yard. The girl's breath came in quick bursts. She clutched his coat tighter around herself, praying it was all a nightmare. The leader gave the order, and the guards stormed forward. The first clash was brutal. The human fired his rifle, the sharp sound splitting the night. A guard fell with a cry, but more rushed forward. The girl screamed as one swung a blade at him. He ducked, striking with the butt of his rifle, sending the soldier crashing to the ground. They fought in close quarters, the human moving with desperate strength, every strike fueled by determination. The girl tried to hide, but the fight raged around her. A soldier spotted her and lunged, reaching for her arm. Panic surged through her. Before he could grab her, the human shoved him aside with a roar, firing another shot that sent the man collapsing. His protection never wavered. He fought like a wall of iron between her and the enemy. But there were too many. For every guard that fell, another pushed forward. The girl's terror grew as she saw him stumble under the weight of blows. His arm bled where a blade had cut him, but he refused to fall. He kept pushing her behind him, even as his breath grew heavy. "Run," she cried out finally, tears streaming down her face. "Leave me. Please, don't die because of me." His eyes flicked toward her for a heartbeat. In that moment, she saw something unbreakable in them. "Not without you," he said firmly, before striking another soldier down. The fight dragged on until the human spotted an opening. With one last burst of strength, he shoved two guards aside and pulled her toward the back of the yard. Hidden behind a pile of broken crates was a narrow passage he had noticed earlier. He forced it open with his shoulder, pushing her through. The girl stumbled, coughing on the dust, but he pulled her forward, never releasing her hand. Behind them, the guards shouted, chasing after them, but the narrow passage slowed their pursuit. The human fired a last shot, collapsing part of the wall to block the way. Then they ran into the darkness, lungs burning, feet pounding against stone. When they finally stopped, far from the sound of soldiers, the girl collapsed to the ground, shaking. She looked at him. Blood streaked his arm, sweat covered his face, but his eyes still held the same fire. He knelt beside her, checking if she was hurt. She grabbed his arm with trembling hands, her voice breaking. "Why do you keep saving me? Why won't you let me go?" His answer came low and steady, carrying more weight than any weapon. "Because you are not garbage. You are not a curse. You are alive, and that is enough." Her tears spilled freely then. For the first time in her life, someone had spoken words that gave her worth. The colony had turned against them. The guards hunted them. Betrayal was everywhere. But in that moment, with his bloodied hands still holding hers, she felt stronger than ever. She realized she was no longer just running for survival. She was running beside someone who had chosen her, even when the whole world demanded he leave her behind. They moved far into the edge of the colony, where broken buildings stood like skeletons under the night sky. The human led her through narrow alleys, his steps careful, his eyes always scanning the shadows. The girl followed close, still clutching his coat around her body. Her heart beat wildly, not only from the run, but from the weight of the truth she had carried all her life. Every step she took beside him made her wonder if she should finally tell him, or if he would turn away once he knew. When they stopped to rest in the ruins of an old factory, the girl sat against the wall, her body shaking from exhaustion. The human placed his rifle nearby, tore a strip of cloth, and wrapped it around his bleeding arm. She stared at the wound, guilt tearing at her chest. He was hurt because of her. He was hunted because of her. Still, he moved with calm, as if his own pain did not matter. The silence between them grew heavy. At last, she whispered, "You don't understand why they hate me, why they treat me worse than dirt." Her voice trembled, each word dragging out of her throat like a stone. "I'm not just from a low caste. I was born with marks on my skin. Marks only those of royal blood carry." She lowered her sleeve, revealing faint glowing lines on her arm, hidden under dirt and bruises. "If I live, I am a threat to the rulers. That is why they try to erase me." The human froze, his hand still gripping the cloth. His eyes focused on the markings, the glow faint but undeniable. She pulled her sleeve back quickly, ashamed, expecting him to recoil. "Now you know," she whispered bitterly. "I am not only a curse, I am dangerous to stand beside. Helping me is treason against their throne." For a long moment, he said nothing. The girl's heart sank. She turned her face away, certain he would finally abandon her. But then his hand reached out, steady, and pulled her chin gently back toward him. His eyes held no fear, only resolve. "Then protecting you is not just about saving you," he said quietly. "It's about standing against their cruelty." Her breath caught. She shook her head in disbelief. "You don't have to. They will destroy you. No human has ever defied their rule and lived." He leaned back, tightening the cloth around his arm. "Maybe," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But if I walk away now, I will no longer be myself. I cannot leave you to them." Tears blurred her vision. She pressed her hands against her face, her voice breaking. "Why? Why would you risk yourself for me?" His answer was simple, spoken without hesitation. "Because you deserve to live." The words struck her harder than any blow. For years, she had been told she was worthless, a stain, something that should be hidden or destroyed. Now, here was someone saying the opposite. She felt her chest tighten, her heart racing in a way she had never felt before. She wanted to believe him, but fear still wrapped around her like chains. Suddenly, noise echoed in the distance. Shouts, the metallic clatter of armor, the sound of soldiers closing in. The human stood quickly, grabbing his rifle. He scanned the broken windows, his body tense. "They found us," he muttered. The girl's blood turned cold. She staggered to her feet, panic in her eyes. "We can't fight them. There are too many. Please let me go. If they take me, maybe they'll spare you." He shook his head sharply. "No, if they take you, they will kill you, and I will not let that happen." The soldiers' footsteps grew louder. Torches flickered outside the broken walls. The human moved to block the main entrance, raising his rifle. His voice was low but steady. "Stay behind me. Do not move until I say." The girl clung to the coat, her hands shaking. She wanted to scream at him again to leave her, but the words would not leave her mouth. Her heart screamed something else, something she could not yet admit. The first soldiers burst inside. The human fired, the rifle cracking in the night. A soldier fell, but more rushed in. The fight exploded in chaos, sparks flying as blades struck against walls, shouts echoing through the ruins. The girl pressed herself against the wall, watching as the human fought with brutal determination. He moved like a man who had nothing left to lose, each strike fueled by a fire that terrified the soldiers. But the numbers were too great. More poured inside, their armor gleaming, their weapons ready. The girl cried out as one soldier swung at him from behind. She ran forward without thinking, shoving the soldier aside. The blade scraped her arm, leaving a burning cut, but she did not stop. She grabbed the human's sleeve, pulling desperately. "Please, we can't win!" He gritted his teeth, knocking another soldier down, then pushed her toward a hole in the back wall. "Go!" he shouted. "Run now!" She shook her head, tears streaming. "Not without you." For a moment, their eyes locked. His expression softened, even as the chaos raged around them. "Then we go together," he said. He struck down another guard, cleared the path, and dragged her through the hole. They stumbled into the open night, the sound of pursuit close behind. The human fired a final shot at the wall, collapsing part of it and slowing the soldiers. Then he pulled her into the darkness of the ruins, their breaths ragged, their steps desperate. When they finally stopped, hidden deep among shattered buildings, the girl clutched her bleeding arm, shaking. He tore another strip of cloth, wrapping it carefully around her wound. His hands were steady, his eyes focused, even as blood trickled from his own injuries. She looked at him through tears. You're hurt because of me. You could have left me, and you didn't. He met her gaze, his voice low but firm. I told you before, if they want you, they'll have to go through me. Her heart swelled painfully at his words. She lowered her eyes, unable to speak. She had never been protected, never been valued, never been worth fighting for. Yet this man, a stranger, had defied an entire colony for her. In the silence of the ruined night, with danger still closing in, she realized something terrifying and beautiful. For the first time in her life, she did not want to die. For the first time, she wanted to live, not alone, but beside him. The sun rose over the colony with a pale light, spreading across towers and broken streets. The human and the alien girl walked toward the great court, where the rulers held power. She was weak from exhaustion, her wound still burning, but she kept moving because he would not stop. His hand never left hers, steady and firm, pulling her forward with each step. The people saw them and gasped. Some shouted warnings, others cursed, but no one dared to stand in their path. Rumors had already run through the city, rumors of a human who defied soldiers, who fought against guards, who walked beside the cursed girl as if she mattered. At the gates of the court, armored guards stepped forward, their spears crossed to block the way. Turn back, one barked. You are not allowed here. The human raised his head, his voice calm but strong. I demand justice. The guards laughed. One shoved the girl back and she stumbled, but the human caught her before she fell. His eyes hardened. You will open these gates, he said, his tone like iron. The guards sneered, ready to strike, but the sound of the crowd behind them grew louder. Whispers turned into shouts. People were gathering to see what would happen. The rulers inside could not ignore it. After a long, tense moment, the gates creaked open. Inside, the hall was filled with cold light and sharp voices. The rulers sat high on thrones, their robes heavy with wealth, their faces twisted in disdain at the sight of the girl. So, one of them said, the disgrace dares return. And with a human? Laughter echoed across the hall. Another ruler stood, his voice sharp. She is to be executed, at once. She stains our bloodline. The girl shook, her knees threatening to give way. She had expected this. Her whole life, she had known death would come from their hands. She whispered to the human, let me go. Please, don't fight them. They will kill you too. But he stepped forward, placing himself between her and the throne. His voice thundered across the hall. If you kill her, you will do it over my body. She has the right to live. The rulers laughed again, their voices cruel. A human dares to speak of rights? You are nothing. She is nothing. Guards, take them both. Armored soldiers advanced. The girl clutched his coat, her heart breaking. She knew this was the end. But the human did not move back. He lowered his rifle, placed it on the ground, and raised his voice once more. I will not fight your guards. I challenge your champion. The hall fell silent. The words echoed against the high walls. A challenge could not be ignored. By their own laws, if someone defeated the court's champion, the rulers had to honor the victory. It was a law as old as their throne, and everyone knew it. The rulers looked at each other, their faces twisted with anger, but they could not deny it. Very well, one of them sneered. You will face our champion, and when he crushes you, your blood will soak this floor, and the girl will follow. The ground shook as the champion entered. He was massive, towering over the human, his armor thick, his weapon a blade larger than the girl herself. The crowd gasped. No human could face such strength. The girl's heart sank. She grabbed his arm desperately. You can't win. Please, don't do this. He looked at her, his eyes steady. I told you, I will not let them take you. The fight began. The champion roared, swinging his blade with crushing force. The human dodged, the strike slamming into the ground, shattering stone. He moved quickly, relying on speed, striking with fists and the smaller blade he carried. Sparks flew as steel clashed. The crowd screamed, the rulers watching with cruel smiles, certain the human would fall. The girl watched with her hands over her mouth, her heart racing with every strike. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't. He fought with everything he had, each move fueled by determination. The champion swung again, cutting across his side, and blood spread across the human's shirt. The girl cried out, but he did not fall. He gritted his teeth, his eyes burning like fire, and pressed forward. Blow after blow, the human endured. His body bled, his arms shook, but his spirit never broke. He ducked under a swing, rolled forward, and struck the champion's leg with a sharp thrust. The giant stumbled, roaring in fury. The human seized the moment, climbing onto the champion's back and driving his blade into the weak joint of the armor. The hall shook with the champion's scream before he crashed to the ground, defeated. Silence filled the chamber. The people stared in shock. The rulers' faces turned pale. By their law, the human had won. They could not take back the challenge. The girl's knees buckled, tears streaming as she ran forward. She dropped beside him, clutching his bloodied arm, unable to believe he was still standing. The lead ruler rose, his voice trembling with anger. By law, the victory is his. The girl is free. The crowd erupted. Some shouted in joy, others in outrage, but none could deny what had happened. A human had defeated their greatest warrior. A human had forced them to bow. The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide with awe. He stood tall despite his wounds, blood staining his clothes, but his hand reached out for hers. She took it, her fingers trembling. For the first time in her life, she stood in the court not in shame, but in pride, because someone had chosen her. The rulers turned their faces away, humiliated, but the people would not forget this day. They would remember the human who defied power, who fought for the cursed girl, who forced the court itself to bend. As they left the hall together, the girl leaned against him, her tears falling freely. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You saved more than my life. You gave me hope." He looked down at her, his eyes calm, his voice low but steady. "No one deserves to live in chains of shame, not even you, especially not you." The girl clung to his hand, her heart full of something she had never known before. For the first time, she believed she was not garbage, not a curse, not worthless. She was alive, and she was free. And beside the human, she felt stronger than the rulers, stronger than her past, stronger than the chains that once bound her.